Here's how a royal title is supposed to work. It's not a decision, it's math. There's a decree signed by King George V back in 1917 that lays out in dry mechanical language exactly who becomes a prince or princess. Grandchildren of the monarch in the male line. Certain lines, certain generations, a fixed rule. No feelings, no committee, no discretion. You are born, the clock ticks over, and the title lands on you automatically, the way sunrise lands on a Tuesday. Nobody sits in a room and decides whether you deserve it. So when Queen Elizabeth died and Charles became king, his grandchildren automatically moved up the board. And two of those grandchildren, Archie and Lilibet, Harry and Meghan's two children, should, under that century-old rule, have simply become prince and princess, automatically, instantly. The math had already been done in 1917. And then, it didn't quite happen like that. There was a pause, a gap. Reports of discussions behind palace walls, of the titles sitting in a strange kind of limbo, used by the parents but not yet reflected on the official channels, for a stretch of months while apparently something was being worked out. The automatic rule suddenly needed a human being to confirm it. The clockwork had a pause button, and for two specific children, somebody's thumb was resting on it. Now, I want to be careful, and I want to be fair from the very first minute, because this is a serious one. I'm going to show you the timeline, just the timeline. And the reason that timeline became genuinely explosive isn't the paperwork, it's how it landed right up against Meghan's claim, made on television to Oprah, that there had been concerns inside the family about Archie before he was even born. That collision, the delay sitting next to the claim, is where this stops being a story about honorifics and becomes something the palace could never afford. I'll get to exactly how those two things touch, but not yet, because you have to understand the rule first before you can understand why the pause matters. So let's stay with the rule. The whole point of the 1917 decree, the reason it exists at all, is to take human judgment out of it. A monarchy runs on the idea that succession and status are fixed, neutral, above anybody's personal feelings. You don't earn a title by being liked. You don't lose one by being awkward. It descends on you by birth order and bloodline, cold and even-handed. And that coldness is actually the point. The machine isn't supposed to have opinions, which is exactly why the delay is such a problem. Because the palace's whole position on titles is that they follow fixed convention, automatic, mechanical, done. But a truly automatic system doesn't hesitate. It doesn't hold discussions. It doesn't need months. You don't convene anybody to confirm that Tuesday follows Monday. And yet here, visibly, over these two children specifically, there was a hesitation. The titles were eventually confirmed and are now used. That part is real and settled. But the road to them had a wobble in it that the rule book says shouldn't exist. And that's the trap the institution walked into with its own feet. Either the rule is automatic, in which case there was no reason on earth for a delay, and no reason for anything to be worked out. Or the rule is discretionary, in which case the institution was, for those months, actively holding the power to decide whether these particular grandchildren got the thing the rule already entitled them to. There's no comfortable third option. A machine that pauses isn't a machine anymore. It's a choice to wear a machine's clothes, and the pause is the tell. So now we've got the real question, and it's a genuinely hard one, so I want you to actually sit with it rather than rush past it. What was that pause? Because there are two honest ways to read it, and I'm going to give you both, and I'm going to give them to you at equal weight, because that's the only fair way to do this, and because both of them, in their own way, are a problem for the palace. Door number one. The delay was pure administration, protocol, the genuine, boring, bureaucratic lag that follows the death of a monarch, when 1,000 official things all have to be updated at once, and nobody moves quickly. Titles, styles, letters patent, official listings, an enormous machine grinding through its paperwork. Under this reading, nobody hesitated about anything. There was no reluctance, no debate about these children specifically. It was just slow, the way big old institutions are slow. That's the innocent door, and it is a real, legitimate possibility. Protocol after a sovereign dies genuinely is complicated. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But look what the innocent door still costs them, because even if it was pure paperwork, the palace's failure to just move fast, to promptly and warmly confirm these two children as prince and princess the moment they were entitled, created, through sheer slowness, the appearance of reluctance. About two mixed-race children, sitting in the shadow of a televised claim about how one of them had been treated. If that was clumsiness, it was the single most costly clumsiness imaginable, an own goal of historic proportions. Door number 2. The delay reflected something real, actual hesitation, actual discussion about whether or how these titles should be granted. And if that's what it was, then it lends weight to the Sussexes' most damaging claim of all, that Archie was, somehow, treated differently from other royal children. Under this door, the pause isn't paperwork. It's a decision being made, slowly, about two specific kids. Clumsy optics, or real reluctance. And here's the thing, I genuinely can't tell you which it was, and neither can anyone outside those rooms, because the palace has never explained it. So I want you to tell me, in the comments, honestly, when you hear about a months-long delay over two specific children's titles, does that read to you like paperwork, or does it read like a decision? Pick one. I read these, and I think this split is going to be a real one. Now let's talk about why any of this actually matters, why a question about two children's honorifics became something far bigger and far more dangerous. Because on its own, a title is a small thing, a word in front of a name. If this were just about protocol, it would be a footnote. It is not a footnote. And to understand why, you have to understand what this landed next to. The title timing did not happen in a vacuum. It happened in the long shadow of the Oprah interview, the one where Meghan said on the record in front of a global audience that there had been concerns and conversations within the family about how dark Archie's skin might be before he was born. I'm quoting her claim. She said it. That is a documented, on-record statement, not something I'm asserting is true, not something anyone has proven, but something she alleged publicly and the whole world heard. So follow what that does to a bureaucratic question about titles. Suddenly it isn't bureaucratic at all. Suddenly the question of whether a mixed-race child was given his rightful place in the family's hierarchy stops being about paperwork and becomes evidence in a far graver argument, an argument about whether this institution treats a biracial child as fully, unquestionably, one of its own. And that is existential for the monarchy in a way that money scandals and behavior scandals simply are not. The crown can survive a lot. It has survived affairs, divorces, disgraced princes, financial embarrassments beyond counting. What it may not be able to survive is the sentence, "The family hesitated over a biracial child's rightful title," because that strikes at the one thing a modern monarchy has to be able to claim, that it belongs to and represents a diverse nation. The stakes here were never two kids' honorifics. The stakes were the institution's moral legitimacy, its right to exist as a modern thing. Okay, this is the moment I promised you at the very start, the collision. Let's actually put the two timelines side by side carefully, because this is the heart of it, and I refuse to overstate it. On the one hand, two mixed-race children whose prince and princess titles, owed to them automatically under a century-old rule, arrived only after a period of visible ambiguity, a delay the palace has never fully explained. On the other hand, an on-record, televised claim made by their mother that there had been concerns about that child's skin color before his birth, a claim the palace has also never directly addressed. And here is what I am not saying, and I want this crystal clear, because it is the whole point of doing this honestly. I am not telling you the delay proves the concerns. I am not telling you this is racism. This channel does not assert that, Because I cannot prove a motive I did not witness, and neither can you. What I'm showing you is something narrower, and honestly, almost worse for the palace. The sheer, documented adjacency of two facts they could never, ever afford to have sitting next to each other. A delayed title for a biracial child, right beside a televised allegation about that same child's treatment. Two facts, touching, and the institution's own silence is what welded them together. Because when you leave a vacuum next to a grave allegation, the public doesn't fill it with the kindest reading. They fill it with the darkest one available. The palace never explained the delay, and it never answered the concerns. And so the two just sat there, adjacent, and the worst possible implication grew in the gap between them like mold in a damp wall. Picture it as a split screen, because that's how the world saw it. On the left, a televised claim about a child's skin color hanging in the air, unanswered. On the right, that same child waiting longer than the rulebook says he should have for the title that was already his. The palace could have collapsed that split screen with a single sentence at any point. It never spoke the sentence. The timeline is all I'm giving you. No motive, no verdict, no accusation I can't stand behind. But the adjacency is the punch, and the palace built the room it's standing in. If this is the kind of royal story you want told this way, straight, careful, the receipts laid out, both doors held open, nobody accused of what can't be proven, then do me a favor and subscribe. That's the whole channel. It genuinely helps. Okay, back to it, because we are not done. Because here's the pattern, and once you see it in this family, you cannot unsee it. The institution's fatal reflex isn't cruelty. It's slow. It's silence at exactly the moment that screams for speed and warmth. Think about the move that was available to them. The instant those grandchildren became entitled, the palace could have moved immediately. A warm, unambiguous public confirmation. Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet. Full stop. Done. No gap. No oxygen for any darker reading. That single act of speed would have diffused everything. And instead, the institution did what it always does. It deliberated. It was delayed. It said nothing and let the thing resolve quietly on its own timetable. But here's the tragedy of that reflex in the modern world. Silence used to read as dignity. Now it reads as reluctance. 100 years ago, saying nothing was strength. Mystery, distance, the unknowability of royalty doing the protecting. Today, saying nothing is just an empty stage, and the internet will write the script for you. And the script it writes is never the flattering one. They didn't necessarily hesitate out of prejudice. I want to be fair. Hesitation is not proof of a motive. But in this family, at this moment, hesitation itself is the scandal. The silence didn't protect them. It convicted them in the court that actually matters now, public perception, because that court reads a royal pause as an answer. Now, to be fair, the palace has its defense, and I want to give it a proper hearing because a fair version of it does exist. The implicit argument is this: these are private family matters and constitutional details handled with due process, and it's unjust to read sinister motives into administrative timing. And you know what? Part of that is genuinely legitimate. Protocol after a monarch's death really is complex. The paperwork really is enormous. If you strip everything else away, "these things take time" is a real sentence with real truth in it. But here's why the defense collapses. It collapses because the institution never did the one thing that would have made it credible. It never addressed the concern's allegation directly. It never cleared the air on the grave charge. And you cannot ask the public to extend good faith about the small thing, the title timing, while you refuse to answer the enormous thing hanging right above it. Silence on the serious accusation poisons the innocent explanation of the minor one. Don't read anything into the delay only works if you're willing to explain the very thing everyone is reading into, and they never were. So the reassurance dies in the mouth. You can't ask for the benefit of the doubt on page 2 while leaving page 1 blank. Which brings us to the core of the whole thing, the moral. And I'll say it plainly, because it deserves to be said plainly. The monarchy insists its titles and its succession are neutral. automatic, above human bias, pure inheritance by fixed rule, untouched by anybody's feelings. And then, the precise moment two mixed-race children's titles came due, the automatic machine slowed to a human crawl. That's hypocrisy. Not a slur, not a smoking gun, a gap. The gap between a system that claims it never makes decisions about who belongs and a visible, documented pause that looks an awful lot like a decision, applied to two specific children at the exact moment their family stood publicly accused of bias about one of them. Neutral rules, applied with a hesitation that only ever needed explaining because of what had already been alleged. And here's the part that stays with me. Look at who's actually left standing in the wreckage of this, because the isolation of it is genuinely sad. Two children, and I want to be completely clear, the children are owed nothing but respect here. They did nothing. They are children, and I will not speculate about them for a second. Two children, an ocean away, whose place in their own family became a public argument they'll one day grow up and read about themselves. Their parents, estranged from the family, pointing to the title timing as proof of the very grievance that drove them out. The palace, unable to fully clear its own name because it won't address the underlying claim, trapped in a silence that protects it legally and damns it morally at the same time. And the concern's allegation itself, never answered, never proven, never dispelled, leaving everyone it ever touched under a permanent gray cloud that no amount of time seems to lift. That's the real isolation. A family so unable to simply talk to one another that a child's title became a proxy war over race. So where does that leave it? The titles were granted. Archie is a prince, Lilibet is a princess, the words are used, and that part, the part that actually matters most for two kids, is settled and right. Good. But the delay, and its adjacency to the concerns claim, is a stain the palace can't scrub out, and here's why it never will. The only thing that could remove it is a full, honest account of what was actually said and of why exactly the titles lagged. And that account is the one thing this institution will never, ever give, because giving it means answering questions, and answering questions is the thing they built 1,000 years of silence to avoid. So here's the question that won't go away, and I genuinely want yours below, and keep it respectful, because two children are inside this story. A delay after a monarch dies can be pure protocol. I believe that. I've said it. I meant it. But it happened to two biracial children, right next to a televised claim about concerns over one of them, and the palace has never explained either one. So was that timing just paperwork? Or was it the paperwork quietly telling us the thing the family would never say out loud? Tell me which door you're standing at. I read them. And if you want to see how deep this particular fault line runs, the way race and the establishment keep colliding around this family, there's another one waiting for you. Two words the late Queen chose with surgical care when she was accused of the very same thing. Recollections may vary. What she meant by them, what she pointedly didn't say, and why that three-word sentence might be the most carefully engineered reply in modern royal history. That one's right here. I'll see you in it.